For younger people, definitely YouTube is television. But interestingly, and nobody would have thought about this, YouTube Shorts is bigger than all of the social networks. It's just the amount of time that people are spending. And everybody thought that TikTok would really hurt everybody else. And so as a result, after TikTok, you've got YouTube launch Shorts and Facebook. And
how good were those copycats going to be? TikTok's running away with it. And it hasn't happened.
So it is taking a huge part of people's time and attention away. And now that most of YouTube, a large percentage of it isn't on mobile, it's on CTV. So it's on Apple TV or Fire or any of those. And so people are just, their viewership is fragmented, but it's also concentrating among a smaller set of services.
Digital advertising is facing growing signal loss across browsers, devices, and connected TV. That makes accurate identity more important than ever. Intent IQ is a privacy-first identity resolution leader helping advertisers, publishers, and platforms recognize and reach real audiences across both cookie-based and ID-less environments. Powered by a patented identity graph and advanced signal enrichment, Intent IQ delivers the scale and accuracy needed to drive measurable performance and better monetization for both advertisers and publishers. To learn how Intent IQ helps turn fragmented signals into real results, visit intentiq.com.
This week on Next in Media, I talked to Activate Consulting CEO Michael Wolf about the good news and bad news facing advertisers. On the one hand, there's a lot more video time out there to capture consumer attention. On the other hand, attention is being diluted because of multitasking. So what's a brand to do? Well, we get into that, plus Paramount-Warner versus Netflix and YouTube, and why we shouldn't give up on VR just yet. Hi, everybody. Welcome to Next in Media. I'm Mike Shields. My guest this week is Michael Wolf. He is the CEO and founder of Activate Consulting. Hey, Michael. How's it going? Thanks for being here.
Oh, it's a pleasure. Great to be with you all.
Love talking to you, especially you're well known for doing this hugely comprehensive report every year about the media and advertising universe and gaming and all these different pieces. One of the things that stood out recently, we've all been talking about how to measure attention, right? And whether a YouTube view is the same as a TV view and then is the same as a TikTok view. And now you're starting to talk about what happens when these things are happening simultaneously, or when attention gets diluted, what happens to the way we measure it?
Every year we do something called our Activate Attention Clock, and we've been doing it now for 11 years. And what we've done is we have measured not just the amount of time that people spend on a technology and media activity, but how much time they spend multitasking, because multitasking is truly a time multiplier.
Yeah.
We've always said, like, the average American is spending actually more than 30 hours. This last year, 32 hours and 17 minutes a day. And of that, 13 hours a day is technology and media, 1304 today, 1319 in the future. So if you think about it, another 15 minutes and what that means. So
it's significant, right? And there's real doubling up there, obviously.
Right. So if you look at it, most of the activities, for example, audio is roughly 2.5 hours a day. Mm-hmm. And 3/4 of people, when they're listening to music or doing something else, something north of 60% are doing something else. Like everywhere you go, it's whether it's social media. The one activity that has tended to be less multitasked has been video games, because
you really can't, depending on how immersive the game is.
And those are PC and console games, because if you're playing a casual game on your phone. So we're seeing this fragmentation of attention. And what's happening is you've got this partial attention to everything.
Right.
And so it has a huge impact on not just people themselves, because everything we do, we say starts with the user, but at the same time, any businesses that are trying to capture that attention.
And have the businesses on either side, either the media companies or the advertisers, caught up to this reality? Because these things are often executed in silos and purchased in silos. And it's assumed that if you get attention in one space, it's 100% of the time, at least in the pricing. Have we caught up to this reckoning?
Yeah, if you look, it's uneven. So roughly today, you've got 64% of television viewership is among the biggest companies. Disney at the moment is the largest, roughly 14%. You've got NBCU 11 tied with Paramount. And then if you look on the streaming side, you have streaming is 36% of all television viewership. And you start going through that, and here the numbers are interesting. YouTube is by far 12.5% of all CTV, followed by Netflix, sort of down to about 9, Disney around 5, Amazon around 4. So you begin to see that even in streaming, it's extremely fragmented, with the leader being YouTube and Netflix and everybody else. Interestingly enough, Paramount's 2.3%, Warner is about 1.4%. So you still, even after that merger, you're still at 3.7%.
Yeah.
Hopefully they're expecting to grow it. So my point is, it's fragmented everywhere, but so that's one business. But there's another side of this, which is you have like different reasons for people to go and shop. So roughly today, for younger demographics, 80% of all shopping starts not with Google or Bing. It starts at the sites. It starts at Amazon or Target or Walmart. We're seeing not just this fragmentation of attention, but we're also fragmentation of how people learn about what they want to buy and where and how they buy.
And that's, we're taking a snapshot of the moment in time. AI promises to potentially up on that even more. I wanted to come back to a lot of points you made there, but the obvious big one of the last couple of years is YouTube on TV. You've been very vocal about how that is television for Gen Z.
Yeah.
Anecdotally, I see that in my world that more and more people are watching YouTube with intent. Are you seeing that with other demographics?
We're seeing it across demographics. For younger people, definitely YouTube is television. But interestingly, and nobody would have thought about this, YouTube Shorts is bigger than all of the social networks. It's just the amount of time that people are spending. And everybody thought that TikTok would really hurt everybody else. And so as a result, after TikTok, you've got YouTube launch Shorts and Facebook. And
how good were those copycats going to be? TikTok's running away with it, and it hasn't happened.
So it is taking a huge part of people's time and attention away. And now that most of YouTube, a large percentage of it isn't on mobile, it's on CTV. So it's on Apple TV or Fire or any of those. And so people are just, their viewership is fragmented, but it's also concentrating among a smaller set of services.
Yeah, if we thought about the long tail in the open web for many years, TV is proving to be the opposite.
It is, no doubt. And overall attention is concentrating among a smaller set of sites.
Yeah.
I'll tell you something interesting about video. And this is fascinating what we've been able to watch. First of all, video is eating everything on the internet.
Right.
But when you look at social, if we were to reverse 5 years ago, we would have seen roughly 49% of social was video, 51% was text. And that number's continued to grow to the point where 71% of all social, and I'm talking about YouTube, TikTok, Instagram, Facebook, all the others, 71% is now video. And the video is not from your friends.
It's really not social in a lot of ways, right? It's entertainment.
So TikTok, 81% of it's from influencers.
Yeah.
Instagram, 72%. YouTube, 94% of it. Facebook, it's more around 50%. The reason it's around 50% is because Facebook has become a much older demographic.
Yeah, you still have grandma sharing the pictures and commenting about it.
Exactly, Mike.
Right.
Exactly.
Coming back to YouTube, they have made great strides in telling this story about how big they are in television, and they've been able to get compared to TV in the ad world. But there's a recent journal story that talks about how far they have to go, it seems. Like certain brands just still categorize them as different. Why do you think that is? Should Madison Avenue open their minds a little bit about that? Or what are the implications if they don't?
So what YouTube doesn't have is what big television does, which is big events that require simultaneous viewing.
Yeah.
We look on television, of course, it's sports everywhere. Sports is in a lot of ways keeping people on television. Sports and news is a lot of, but you end up with big events. It's not just the Super Bowl, it's the Oscars, it's the Grammys,
right?
It's the Country Music Awards. It's so many big events where everybody's watching at the same time, very large audiences. And YouTube has only now begun to get those kinds. So if you look at YouTube, like Coachella is one of YouTube's biggest simultaneous events.
Yeah.
Right now, it's about 200 million people watching Coachella concurrently. Probably in a couple of years, it'll be 500 million. And you've got the NFL. In fact, Satya Nadella, when he talked about different sources of programming, he mentioned those too. So they've now taken the Oscars. We're going to see more and more sports. That's how it becomes much bigger. So otherwise, you've got advertisers who are looking at this very much as a direct response vehicle.
They're going to still see that as on demand and creators, which is not negative, but the tent poles help bring in the big brands. Like I almost wonder if YouTube maybe should have gone more aggressively after the NBA or MLB or something, just to get in that game a little more. No pun intended.
And if you look at, yes, they've got Mr. Beast with roughly in any one video an average like 26 million views. You've got the Stokes twins, you have Zach Film. You've got all these top influencers or creators, but interestingly enough, for an advertiser, they're not as valuable. Actually, for a sponsor that's embedded in the programming, it's very interesting, but those sponsors aren't driving real engagement and advertising for YouTube itself.
Right. Yeah. I often wonder if there's a way that YouTube should eventize their media buying option somehow where you could buy I'm making this up. If the brands want some alternative to getting 10 million people in one day, like they do in sports, somehow they could do that with a bunch of creators on their premiere date or something like that.
Yeah. And most branded advertisers, top of funnel advertisers, they're much more interested in something that's simultaneous and embedded in a show. I think what we will see with AI is we're going to see a number of advertisers who it's essentially like virtual product placement.
Yeah.
And there we should expect to see a lot more.
Okay, let's take a quick break. I'm here with Josh Mellick. He's the SVP of Product and Data at App Science, a division of Sabio. Hey, Josh, thanks for being here.
Yeah, nice. Thanks for having me, Mike.
So, Josh, you guys have made household graph a big differentiator in what you do. Why is that?
From the very beginning, data and audiences has been what we focused on. We combine mobile data with CTV data, and we think that gives a really good picture of audience. I wouldn't say that we focus on every element or every type of segment, but there's quite a few segments that we really focused on that are important to our clients and advertisers. Multicultural audiences, younger generational cultural shifts, where a lot of these areas that are really important to the advertisers we serve. And we've focused on that from the very beginning.
So how central is the household graph to the media that you run?
We use our data on something like 95% of our campaigns. So it's very central. It's very important to what we do. Now, we do bring in outside data as well. And actually, I think often the most interesting audiences or the most impactful campaigns use our data along with some data by the advertisers, perhaps some of their first-party data or some other data as well. And we think that's really where it's powerful. And all of our campaigns are using something like that.
All right, great stuff. Thanks, Josh. Back to the show.
Thanks, Mike.
I want to ask you, you mentioned the Paramount-Warner deal. It's been a fascinating couple of months for that story, of course. It's going to take a long time for that deal to close, but you noted, it's spoken of as if there might be a potential monopoly in some circles, but combined, it's still going to be a smaller piece of the TV viewership than the big guys. Can they grow that? How does that change the ad market? What needs to happen next there?
They can definitely grow it. They've said there will be no more Paramount Plus, but the evidence is that they were able to convert CBS Plus and Showtime into Paramount Plus. There's evidence that shows that you start merging these services, they get bigger, and they've got a lot to promote with. You've got, once again, coming back to the value, you've got CBS Sports, you've got so much on the network. And so the biggest problem with these streaming services, everyone looks at it and says how much money they're spending on programming. The bigger challenge is what they have to spend on customer acquisition.
Yeah.
And they're giving all that money away to Amazon, which is the place where most customer acquisition takes place, but to Apple and Roku and other places. So them being able to use their giant megaphone will go a long way.
And it would seem imperative to hold on to the NFL. I know they're already talking about trying to renew that.
Yeah.
You mentioned AI. There's a two-part question. I think there's been some hope wishful thinking maybe that we'd see a lot more small brands come to the CTV world really quickly, in part because of AI. That hasn't totally happened yet. And then I want to ask you about what you're thinking in terms of making it easier to spend with creators thanks to AI. If you can maybe break those pieces down for me.
Yeah, so I think it's not yet really set up for smaller brands to use CTV extensively as a self-service, considering the social networks and Google and YouTube, they're all really set up for self-service, but CTV really isn't yet. And then also any of the CTV platforms, they're more interested in larger advertisers.
As much as they're talking a big game, they're going to cater to their top agencies and the top 500 brands.
Right. But it's similar to television. There's scarcity here.
Yeah.
And their algorithm ends up really going to the people who can pay the most. And unlike Google search or something where the algorithm could be more valuable to one company or another, this is less measurable.
Yeah, it's auction based. It's different.
For the most part. AI will change the dynamic a lot more because we're really going to be able to get to a point where there's a lot more personalization in advertising. We are getting close to the point where the ad you see is different than the ad I see in video, because the ability for AI to, even with a celebrity, to recut it, very, very different.
Yeah. Okay, what about you mentioned the virtual product placement idea. There's obviously a lot more interest in the creator economy among brands, and the bottleneck seems to be it's just not that easy to spend with a bunch of them at once. These integrations tend to be very custom. And there's a lot of companies trying to change that. Are you hopeful there that someone can figure that out? And is it going to be an AI-driven thing?
I'm hopeful they're going to figure it out, but it's going to be much more of a repertory company of different stars, of different creators versus somebody doing it just as a platform on top of them. There's already a way for creators that they're popular but not with many views, which is they sell advertising through YouTube.
Yeah.
The largest ones are, in many cases, are now selling their own advertising and splitting it with YouTube, or even taking a bigger piece of it than YouTube. And they get more powerful. Mr. Beast is a good example because it's not just him, it's all the other people in his stable of talent.
Yeah. And they're attempting to have their own upfronts. It's just, that is not something that can just be a self-serve, scaled up kind of thing overnight. They don't want to devalue what they're building.
No, not at all. And what's fascinating about Mr. Beast is he's one of the very few influencers that's on more than one platform.
Right.
So he's number one on YouTube and something like number 4 or 5 on Facebook. But by the way, not strong anywhere else, not on Instagram, not on TikTok. And so these people don't necessarily travel across, they're very platform specific.
Yeah. What about, you mentioned how among all these different platforms, gaming is the one that really still maintains people's attention without a lot of distractions by nature, especially the harder core stuff. I feel like I've been waiting forever for in-game advertising to be a bigger deal. But you talk about how important that time is now, especially for Gen Z and Gen Alpha. Where are brands in terms of gaming? Is it always going to be a side thing, or are you hopeful that it gets bigger?
Yeah, I think it has to be more authentic. In-game advertising was literally a sign in the back of your character. The difference is, so if I look at a game like NBA 2K, there's the ability, it's not just even part of the gameplay, it's like you're playing with other people, you can have a coffee with your friend, and you can imagine that the coffee with your friend is at Starbucks.
Right.
So that's advertising. It's not performance advertising. Similarly, in Grand Theft Auto, there's a casino. And there's actually multiple casinos. But I can imagine that casino isn't just a generic casino, that it's Bally's.
Yeah.
And that, by the way, there could be even real betting in those games. So
why not these days?
I think that's really much more authentic, much more integrated, much more native than the kind of interruption advertising that we see elsewhere.
Yeah. I want to come back to sports again, because you mentioned how they're so important to brands. It's propping up the TV industry. But there is, I don't know if it's worry, but Gen Z consumes sports differently. And there's some thinking about whether we're ever going to get these guys to sit through 3-hour games like we're used to. Do the leagues need to do something about that? Are they doing enough in terms of embracing creators and social media aspects of sports? What do they do there?
The leagues are trying to do some things, make the game more interesting. One of the biggest drivers of people watching sports starts with fandom and then it's individual players, but a big piece of it now is sports gambling.
Yeah.
And now that you've got a lot more in-game betting, you've got prop bets, it isn't just about money, it's about engagement. You do find people that watch an entire game front to back, and there are other cases where they're watching a small piece of it. If you're betting on it, you're going to keep coming back. If you're part of a fantasy league, you're going to come to you. But especially as those bets become very specialized, this player, this number of points, these two plays, then people are going to watch through the end.
Yeah. Whether that is good for society or not, it's maybe an open question.
Yeah.
But
I have to say, I never like to consult or extrapolate from my own experience, but I live in a house with 2 Gen Z sons, and they are watching the whole game. Part of it is they're betting on the game.
Yeah. All right. As long as you're being responsible, I feel good about that. Last thing, Michael, what else, either from your recent report or what are you watching this year that brands or media executives should be thinking about that we haven't covered here? What's on top of your mind?
Yeah, I think that probably for me, the most important thing that's happening today is spatial computing. It's been discounted. The Vision Pro, like at best estimates, has sold 400 to 500. Apple doesn't release the numbers, even if it's 600,000. But how can you argue with the fact that you have practically every major technology company throwing a lot of money into this? So
even with, it seems, Meta's pulling out of the metaverse. It's over. You're not seeing that.
No, Meta's pulling out of metaverse, but they're not pulling out of the AI glasses. Actually,
right, the tech, the hardware. Yeah.
Yeah. So if I look at the AI glasses, some of the things are even rumored, but you got people who really have a product and are in process. Meta, Alibaba, Google, Huawei, Snapchat. NVIDIA's created, they have a patent for a set of AI glasses.
You're right. We're not talking about this enough.
Yeah. And so everyone's looking at the VR side, which of course is Meta and it's HTC and Samsung and yes, Apple. But despite the low sales on Vision Pro, every day there's somebody creating a new application. There's actually rumors that Apple will not just create one spatial device, but 3. AI device with spatial, and they're talking about glasses, a fob, and AirPods with cameras. So there are a couple things that are really critical about this. One, yes, they've got to get the hardware right, but they will. And suddenly it's a way of bringing AI into the wild, and it's a way of bringing games, video, everything else. Yeah. One of the first applications on the Snap glasses is you play a game because you get used to using it. The part that nobody talks about is that this requires massive amounts of data. So it requires artificial intelligence. So it's really through an LLM, visual because it recognizes an object, and spatial because it recognizes it in real world. But then it needs data. And the data is probably the thing that is the most difficult, not the device. And it's really data in the cloud. So it's capturing not just what I'm seeing and what you're seeing, but what everybody else is seeing. It goes into a giant network, and then that informs everyone else. So you could say, why would anybody do that? There's privacy concerns. If you have a Tesla, your Tesla has a ton of cameras around it.
Yeah.
And you don't get to use any of the special features, whether it's self-driving or assisted driving, unless you turn that on. And that is data that is shared with everybody else.
Right. So we're already there. We just don't realize it. We're getting there.
Exactly. And I'm also very excited still about the VR piece of it. What Meta did by shutting down Horizon Worlds is they realized they weren't going to create like that 1/3 place for everybody.
Right.
That more naturally resides in video games. There's not going to be one place to go. And by the way, those places that everybody goes to, they're already there. It's Minecraft.
Roblox.
It's Roblox.
Yeah. Fortnite.
Fortnite and others. Right.
All right. So we got to be a little more patient around spatial computing and VR, because that will be, like you said, that will be a very profound behavioral change and huge implications if that comes true.
Very much so.
All right. Well, Michael, awesome conversation. Fascinating stuff as always. And let's do this again sometime. Thanks so much.
It's a fascinating moment in technology, internet, media, entertainment. And I'm excited to be here with you and continue to watch and listen to you.
Absolutely. Thanks, Michael.
Thank you.
Thanks again to my guests this week, Activate Consulting CEO Michael Wolf, and my partners at Sabio and Antenna IQ. If you like this week's episode, please take a moment to rate and leave a review. We have lots more to bring you, so please hit that subscribe button. We'll see you next time for more on What's Next in Media. Thanks for listening.